Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Be seated. What kind of world do you want to live in? That's a question that is begged to be asked when we hear Jesus teaching on the Sermon on the Plain in Luke's Gospel. What kind of world do you want to live in? And there are different answers that people have come up with this question. One that was prevalent in Jesus' time was we want to live in a world marked first and foremost by justice. And what does that look like? Well, that means that those who do bad things are going to get their comeuppance, and I'm going to make sure it happens. It means that when we are offended, that we have the moral obligation and responsibility to set things right, to cut another person down, to make them pay for what they have done to us and to our family. There are two characters in popular culture from different time periods that really embody this way of living. And they both have the same words come from their mouth. To the last I grapple with thee, from hell's heart I stab at thee. For hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee. The first to utter these words were Captain Ahab in his showdown with the great white whale. And then they were uttered later on by one of my favorite villains of all time. Not the Benedict Cumberbatch con of recent occurrence, but the Ricardo Montalban con from Star Trek, as he was about to blow up his ship to take out Captain Kirk and the Enterprise. And he was willing to sacrifice himself and his crew for the sake of vengeance, just like Ahab was willing to sacrifice himself and his crew to bring down that whale. It is a dark thing to live with hate in your heart. It produces a twisted human being. And so oftentimes when we are wronged, when people sin against us, we allow ourselves to be ruled by that wrong, to be ruled by sin for years and years and years. And it's not a sin that we committed, but it's a sin that was committed against us. But when we allow that to rule in our hearts, there is a darkness that grows in us. The psalmist presents a different way of approaching this. Do not fret yourself because of evildoers. Do not be jealous of those who do wrong. For they shall soon wither like the grass, and like the green grass fade away. Jesus commends to his followers to allow God to dispense vengeance, to be free from that which others have done to you. In the gospel lesson for today, he says, I say to you then, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who abuse you. That is, to be free from that evil which has done to you so that you don't get caught in evil, God has given us grace to forgive one another. And so we don't have to be the defender of that evil that's done against us. We can give that to God. And we can be free from that sin. Again, not a sin that we committed, but a sin that somebody else has committed against us. So that's one way that people live, is that they want to make people responsible for that evil that they have done. Well, I tell you another way that people live is they create strategic friendships. Have you ever had a friend who wasn't really a friend? Somebody that liked you not because of who you were, but because of the privilege or prestige, the place that you hold, the opportunity that you represent. There are many times when people play the friend because there is something to gain. And Jesus speaks into that situation. He says, if you love those who love you, what credit is it to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. Even sinners, if you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? For even sinners lend to sinners and receive as much again. Zelda Fitzgerald, author or wife of F. Scott Fitzgerald, once said that what most people need to learn in life is how to love people and use things, instead of using people and loving things. It hurts when you find that a friend is not truly a friend. And sometimes we can be guilty of liking some people more because of what they can give to us. And so Jesus says to care for those who cannot give back to you. And when you do these kind of behaviors, you situate yourself to be able to face any storm, because you have friends that don't run away when the storm comes. You have friends that are based on love and not on opportunity. So what is the world that you want to live in? Well, Joseph had an answer to that. And in many ways, Joseph in the Old Testament is the prototype for the gospel lesson that Jesus is proclaiming in the Sermon on the Plain. Joseph, when he was young, had a dream. Had a couple of dreams that his mother and his father and his brothers would all bow down to him. His brothers were so envious, so jealous of the place that Joseph had, so angered by this vision that Joseph had, that they cast him into a pit, faking his death. And when they had second thoughts about it, they sold him into slavery. They went back and they told their father a lie. They said, "Your son has been killed." And they watched their father weep because they were jealous of his brother. And they never told the truth. And Joseph went to Egypt, and he was given visions and understanding of dreams. And he came to be second in command of all Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. And there was a great famine that happened in the land, and his brothers came to Egypt seeking food. Joseph had great authority, had great power, had every opportunity to be able to show his brothers their just deserts. He could have had them executed, or he could have just let them languish and starve. After all, they deserved it. And yet Joseph is marked with a wisdom that God has put in his heart. And he understands that evil that his brothers did to him brought him into a place where he could be the salvation of his whole family, where he could provide for their needs. The one catch, he had to forgive them. And when he forgave them, he embraced them and he wept. And his relationships were restored. And the brothers of Joseph, and his father and his mother, all settled in the land of Goshen. And they became a prosperous people, a people that we call Israel. And they were born out of the fruit of forgiveness of Joseph. What kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world where we have to hold one another account for the wrongs and make them pay for the wrongs done to us? Do we want to live in a world where people have relationships that are just functional and seek to get us ahead? Do we want to live in a world that's based upon love and truth? It's based upon true friendships that stand up to the storm, that allow for forgiveness so that one bad act does not wreck the relationship. This is the vision that Jesus gives to us. A resilient life built on the fabric of love. I pray that we would all have the heart to step into that world that God has envisioned for us. In the name of God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.